Namaste, this is Anjali Mishra, student of Political Science in Zakir Hussain Delhi College, University of Delhi. I am the new intern at the Sabha, and today I am going to discuss with you an issue on the topic of violence against women in India and the world. Violence against women and girls is a grave violation of human rights. Its impact ranges from immediate to long-term, multiple physical, sexual, and mental consequences for women and girls, including death. It negatively affects women's general well-being and prevents women from fully participating in society. Violence not only has negative consequences for women, but also their families, the community, and country at large. It has tremendous cost from greater healthcare and legal expenses and losses in productivity impacting national budgets and overall development. India recorded an average of 87 rape cases daily in 2019 and overall 4,05,861 cases of crime against women during the year, a rise of over 7% from 2018, the latest government data shows. Majority of these cases were registered under Indian Penal Code section 498A3, cruelty by a husband or his relatives, section 354, assault on women with intent to outrage her modesty, under section 366, kidnapping and abduction of women, and under section 375. Section 375 of the IPC made punishable the act of sex by a man with a woman if it was done against her will or without her consent. The definition of rape also included sex when her consent has been obtained by putting her or any person in whom she is interested in fear of death or of hurt. Protests have erupted in several parts of India after the body of a gang rape victim was cremated late at night against the wishes of her family. This 19-year-old girl was gang raped in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh at a place called Hathras. She was found lying in a pool of blood, paralyzed with injuries in her neck and spine. She died while undergoing treatment. Her family says they were forced to cremate her. The case gets murkier when you consider another factor, that this girl was a Dalit. The family says that all the four accused had a history of harassing Dalit in that area. We have always said that a crime is a crime and should not be seen through filters of caste and religion, but where there is enough to suggest that these factors played a role, it would be wrong not to mention them. The brutality in Hathras is a blot on India. It comes 8 years after the Nirbhaya case, or what is also referred to as the 2012 Delhi gang rape case. That winter, India lit candles, marched in solidarity, chanted never again, but this country could not keep its words to its daughters. The Nirbhaya case was supposed to be a wake-up call for India. Rape laws were toughened, Nirbhaya Fund was set up to ensure women's safety and security. What happened then? Our system has failed on so many fronts. Reports say 63% of the Nirbhaya Fund allocated to states has not been used according to government data. According to NCRP report, India saw more than 4 lakh cases of crime against women. What happened to these women? Did they get justice? How long they have to wait? Nirbhaya's family had to wait for 8 years to get justice, and this case was apparently fast-tracked. 8 years later, when it comes to crime against women, India's slow legal process failed to act as a deterrent. It has created agitation, anxiety, and unrest in people. The result is this. In India, people are citing the slow judicial process to justify taking laws in their own hands. What happened in Hyderabad last year makes for a classic example. A veterinary doctor was gang raped, brutalized, and murdered in Indian city of Hyderabad. All 4 accused were killed in a police encounter even before a trial could begin, and the public cheered this. For many, it was justice served. This is cliché but true, that justice delayed is justice denied. However, violence against women is a global concern. It's nobody's case that India doesn't have an appalling record, but it's a global concern. Now we will be looking some of the cases from our neighborhood and cases from different parts of the world. Pakistan. Pakistan ranks 6th in the list of world's most dangerous nations for women according to Women Peace and Security Index. Over 10,000 cases of gender-based violence were reported across Pakistan. Religious persecution and violence against women are some of the most salient features of Pakistan, said Sindhi American human rights activist Fatima Gul at the United States House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing on human rights in South Asia. According to Human Rights Watch, child sexual abuse remains disturbingly common in Pakistan. Same has been the case with China. China has launched a birth control campaign under which it's taking draconian measures to slash birth rates among Uyghur Muslims and other minorities. China is carrying out a genocide, quote unquote, through forced sterilization, abortions, and insertions without consent. We lost a part of our body. We lost our identity as women. We will never be able to have children again. They have cut one of our organ. It's gone, said Uyghur Muslim woman Jamrud Daud. Violence against women and denial of equality of opportunity to women is a serious issue in every part of the world. Look at some more examples on that. A murder of a 27-year-old woman by her ex-boyfriend has sparked outrage in Turkey, shining a light on the country's shockingly high femicide rate and government efforts to roll back legislation designed to protect women from gender-based violence. According to 2009 study on prevention strategies, 42% of Turkish women aged between 50 to 60 had suffered some physical or sexual violence by their husbands or partners. The Guardian report says. Have you seen celebrities posting their black and white pictures with the caption #challenge accepted on their social media platforms in recent days? This was in solidarity with the Turkish movement and in order to spread awareness to make the point that they could be the next victim of femicide. The black and white challenge crossed the borders. Women around the world has been victims of violence subservient to their male counterparts. Now, another example from another country. The Me Too movement. The Me Too movement was a turning point in history as countless women broke their silence about the sexual misconduct and abuse that they had faced at the hands of powerful figures. But one country, and I'm talking about Iran, had stayed silent, and now 3 years later, women in Iran are finally speaking out and lifting the veil on subject. For the past 2 months, Twitter has been flooded with narrowing accounts from Iranian women. Some have called out the systematic sexual harassment that they faced at the workplace. Others allege sexual abuse at the hands of family members and their male friends. Some allege that they were raped after falling unconscious, while others accuse men of spiking their drinks and assaulting them. Social media is outrage, and strong allegations have been leveled at those in position of powers, including an academic, a novelist, a renowned painter, a singer, and even an actor in Iran. Also, a debate on hijab, that whether women should wear hijab or not in public places, is intensified again. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres would put it, quote, sexual violence against women and girls is rooted in centuries of male domination. Let us not forget that the gender inequalities that fuel rape culture are essentially a question of power imbalances, unquote. Indeed, it is a question of power imbalances. Women make up 24% of members of national legislative bodies around the world. Only 24. According to the International Peace Institute, an agreement related to peace or territory is 35% more likely to last for 15 years if women participate in its creation. The same report states that the peace agreement is 64% less likely to fail with women's participation. Some recent studies on post-conflict agreements shows that the ones that are negotiated without women break down faster than those that do include women. The World Bank reports that higher gender equality levels make more peaceful state with a lower conflict between and within the countries. Thus, to conclude, we need to have more and more women in the legislations and executive bodies of the government for the fair representation of half of the world's population. Also, fundamentally, it is the mindset that needs to be changed. The patriarchal thinking that is so deep in people's mind for years needs to be changed from the very base in the upbringing of both the boys and the girls. When gender equality will start at home, change is inevitable.